Hey there, fellow React learners. Today we are diving into another essential topic, UseEffect hook. But don't sweat it if you are new to React or programming. We are going to break it down into a simple, easy to understand steps. So this example is just for displaying a message or creating a message on the screen. So what we want is when our component render for the first time, I want to set this message state and change its value from empty string to a greeting message. Okay, so basically what we want is we have this state or we have this thing in our magical box. If you remember, the state is like a magical box where you put things in there and store them, right? So what we want is that we want to those things, if you want to change them or any behavior to happen to them, I want some other things to happen on the screen. That's what's called side effects of the components or use effects. Okay, so use effects will help us to handle these scenarios. And if you came out from the old world of React, which use class components, you must have used the component lifecycle methods like component will mount, component did mount, and so on, where there were very long life cycles methods of the components, and we used to use them a lot. And most of the times, if we have very complex components, we end up by creating a lot of bugs and issues, and they're very difficult for us to solve. With the React hooks, they introduce UseEffect to also handle the life cycle of the components within a pure or functional component. And it saves us all these life cycles. We don't have to deal with them anymore. And we will see in some examples how we can handle some scenarios as well, but they're very straightforward and easy to debug as well. Now, how we can use UseEffect in our component here. First thing first is we import UseEffect from React. Then you can come inside your component, okay, before the return function. You can place it anywhere inside your function component, okay. We start by UseEffect, and then we call inside of it a arrow function, okay. And here all your code goes, okay, to handle side effects. Alright, now any code you want, any things you want to do to your component when a prop change or a state change goes right here, okay. Now this is the first argument of your use effect. The second argument is optional, you can add it or not, and that's called array of dependencies, okay, array of dependencies. And it's an array of, it can be of prop, it can be of states, it can be even for a function that you're calling. If you want this use effect to trigger when a message change, for example, that's your state, you just put message here. If it's a property, you'll put a property here, and we will see examples also later, so forget about this one. But in our example now, when we put an empty array, or even if you don't put anything, that means the use effect will render the first time the component renders, okay, only the first time, that's it. If anything else change, it will not run again, okay. Now let's say we want to do a greeting message, okay. At the moment you can see on the screen there's nothing, so I'll come here and I'll say set message, and I'll say hi coders, okay. As long as I click save, you see that's coming up there, okay. And let me show you one more cool thing. Let's open the profiler and I'll just rerun the profiler for you, and that will record for me the performance of the components and how many times it renders. Also it will show me the reasons. I will stop, and now I'll go down here and I'll see my components here. This is home, okay, and I'll go right next to the next one, and inside home that's my component, okay. And you can see here it rendered twice. If I click it, I can see here it rendered twice. The first time it rendered, that's because it was my first time this component renders, right, which is the first time, and you saw it the first time to be empty message, okay. And then what happened, because we have a hook running, it triggers another run. Okay, if I go second one, and you can see it's labeled yellow because some work has been done with the use effect. So you can see if I click it, it's saying why this rendered, because one hook changed. Okay, and usually it's give number hook 1. If you have complex component, you have 2, 3, 5, 10. Okay, and usually they're by order. So if I go back to my component, okay, it will see the hooks by order. Okay, so the hook 1 change is hook use state, because that's a hook, right? And how it changed, because inside my use effect I triggered that hook. So second time it renders, it's because of my use state being triggered again. So I hope this makes sense. So first time it rendered, this one renders, this one was empty, so it was empty. Then my use effect says, oh, I'm here, I don't have any dependencies, I need to run for the first time as well. So this one also runs, which triggers a second re-render for your component, and it set my state message to the new value high coders. And that's why you see 2 rerun. If you go here to the third one, my component didn't really re-render. It's just a side effect of hot reloading on my local machine, which we can skip counting off. Now, let's go to the other scenarios of dependencies. Now, let's look at another example where you want to use effect to run only when someone, for example, clicks a button, right? Which means in this case we have here, in this example, we have a counter. The button increments our state value, which means I want my use effect to trigger only my count state value changes. Okay, now let me remove this one and let's import use effect. Okay, again we said we count before return, but any place, but best thing after is setting the state. Use effect, we call an arrow function, and add our dependency array. Let's keep it empty for now. So what I will try to do now is I will try to have this title here displaying for me the counter. Okay, so what I can do is say document dot title equal count. Save it, and you can see here it's 0. Okay, and let's try now increment our counter. You see I'm incrementing, but the 0 is not changing, it's staying the same. And the reason why is, if you remember, we said if you add an empty array, that means the use effect will only run the first time. Okay, if you want it to run every time, we need to add a dependency values that have to listen to. Okay, it's like a listener. What values, what properties, what functions, what states it has to listen to, so when they change, this use effect trigger again. So in our scenario, we want that this document title to display every time for me the count whenever I change, which means I have to listen to this count state here. So I'll come here, I will say, okay, use effect, listen for me to this count state. Whenever it changes, please change for me the document.title. Let me hard refresh, and now 0. Let's try increment 1. You can see there it's changing as well. Increment 2, and it's changing as well. You can see that, right? Great. So this is another scenario of the dependency array. Now let's talk about a return function. Oh, what's that? Okay, so in UseEffect you have something called a return function, which is optional. Okay, you can add it or don't add it. Okay, and what this one used for is for cleanup. So it's used to clean up your components from anything like listening events or anything like that. Okay, and mostly up to now I see it using, we want to clean up some timer or some event listening to the windows, things like that. I'll see you first show you how it works, and then we'll demonstrate you also with an example. So the way it works is that we just, in the end of UseEffect, we'll just come there and write return. Okay, and it will be also an arrow function. For time being, all what I do is a console log. Okay, and I'll say console log cleaning up my company. Okay, and let's do one thing. Let's add console here log as well. Okay, and we see the order how it runs. Let me hard refresh. Okay, you can see first thing here is like the first render. We said our component renders, that's set window title. Then this one runs in the second time. Okay, before it runs this code here, it's running first the cleanup code. So always the cleanup code will run before the actual code runs. Okay, now let me click the increment button. You see, clean up my component, and then it's going and doing the actual code within the UseEffect. Okay, let's do again clean up our console. Let's click our button again. There we go. Again, same thing. Clean up my component and then setting up my window count. Alright, now let's see a real example of how can return function be very useful for us within the UseEffect. So let's all talk about timers. Imagine you're making a digital clock for your website. You want to show the current time in here, okay, to the customers or to the users, and of course the clock have to update every second, just like a real clock. That's where the UseEffect will come to us and save us in this scenario. So first thing first is that we set up a state called time, and also we are setting up our setter function that will help us to update this time. Now we will go to our UseEffect. Okay, I already imported here and I put the skeleton for us. Okay, now remember, when you have an empty array, that means this UseEffect will only run once when the component mounts. Now let's add the functionality to update the time every second. So for this we'll create an interval inside our UseEffect. Okay, and this function updates the time. You see here we're setting time every 1 second or every 1000 milliseconds. Okay, and we are storing this new value in a constant called timer ID. Now here is the cool part. We have our return function inside our UseEffect, which we will use to help us clean up our timer after every time the component renders. So we can come here, I'll paste this one. So also what we are doing is that we're clearing interval and we are removing it, and again setting up to 0, so when it does new date next time when the component renders, it will start again from the fresh. This way it helps us to save the memory leak in our application. This may look tiny and small thing in the beginning, but when you have a big applications with big data and a lot of event listenings to your windows and many like WebSockets and all that stuff, these things will start matter, and you'll be able to see difference in your application performance when you take these clean up in consideration. And there you go, you have it, amigos. UseEffect made very simple. So go ahead, sprinkle some UseEffect magic into your React project and watch them sparkle. Until next time, happy coding!